Hi, my name is Stephen Campbell. I've been attending Northwest Hills now for almost a year and a half. My story is one of brokenness, followed by years of me trying to fix it on my own, and finally realizing that I am not qualified, and that the only one who can bring true healing to brokenness is Jesus Christ. So I was raised in church. My father's a pastor, my grandfather's a pastor. I've always known church and the Bible and God and that Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins. But there are some subjects that people in the church that I grew up in and a lot of churches don't talk about, and they didn't talk about in my family. And one of the big ones that was incredibly taboo was the subject of sex. When I was 6 or 7 years old, I was molested by actually someone in the church. But because sex wasn't talked about ever, I didn't say anything. But then I also didn't know how to ask for help, because then that confused me in a lot of ways, and I ended up becoming angry with God, and I walked away, and I completely gave myself over to all of these addiction and desires that I had. And my entire childhood was lived in, it was two lives basically. There was the side where I fed my addiction and I lived in shame, and it was just a constant cycle. And there was the other side, the one that everybody saw, the one where I was a good Christian pastor's son. And somewhere in the space between those two lives was a lie, something that I came to believe about myself, which was that there was something intrinsically wrong with me. Like, I knew that everybody had a sin nature. I knew that Jesus Christ died for that, but it didn't make sense to me that I belonged to Him, and I still struggled with this unless maybe God made a mistake when He made me, and there was something about me that wasn't the same as everybody else. I started to struggle with depression. Depression, if you've never dealt with it, then it's hard to understand, and the only way I can think to explain it is that depression is a thief. It steals your ambition and your drive, and eventually it just steals your will. I stopped taking care of my body. I stopped taking care of my relationships. I had lost 40 pounds in 6 months because I wasn't eating anymore and I wasn't sleeping. And I was completely emotionally dependent on my best friend. He decided he had enough. He told me in no uncertain terms, and very unexpectedly, he wanted me out of his life. So my whole entire world just came crashing down in one text message. It was like the room was spinning and the floor was gone, and I was just falling, and I was scared, and I was in so much anguish. I rushed over to another friend's house because I was afraid to be alone. And on the way there was a voice in my head that kept telling me to crash my car. It kept getting louder and more convincing, telling me the pain would stop. It would just take a few seconds, just crash your car. But by the grace of God, I made it. I didn't crash my car. My friends were there. They looked out for me. And the next weekend, I was in church at a Saturday night service because I didn't know where else to go. I was still in so much pain, like there was so much despair, that when everybody stood up to worship, to sing songs, I didn't even have the strength to lift my head. And God spoke to me. And for maybe the first time in my life, I heard Him completely clearly. There wasn't a doubt in my mind as to who was talking to me and what He was saying. I knew it was Him. And He said simply, "Stephen, I had to let this happen." Just like a bone, when it's broken, if it's not set properly, it gets worse, not better. And the only way that I could get your attention, the only way I could set it right and start the healing over, was to let your friend break your heart here at your lowest point. So will you let me heal you? And I don't remember giving Him a specific answer, but I know in my heart I surrendered to the process, to His healing then and there. And it was like peace that I had never once in my life. I grew up in church. I've been saved since I was a child, but for the first time in my life, I truly surrendered, and true peace came into my life. And the pain was still there. I was still brokenhearted, but the Lord was with me, and I was okay. And I'm still on that journey of healing. And there's been times where I want to quit because it feels like, shouldn't this be over by now? And the Lord reminds me every time of the promise He made to the Philippians through Paul. He said, began a good work in you, and he's talking to me, to you, Stephen, I began a good work, and I will complete it. And I'll complete it for my son, Jesus Christ, when he returns for you. And that hope is what keeps me going. If you are struggling with something, shame or sin, or whatever it is that you feel you can't talk about, you can. I suffered for 20 years because I didn't think that I could talk about things that I was dealing with anyone. And the truth is, God and his church are the places where you're supposed to talk about it, and you can talk about it. And that's the only way that things are going to change.